Welcome to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision meets strategy and bold moves create measurable results. I'm Liat Siegel, interior designer and ROI strategist with 17 years of experience. I help businesses transform properties and ideas into high-performing assets. This show is specifically for real estate investors, hospitality operators, and boutique developers who aren't afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, and demand a return on every decision they make. Each and every week, we talk with innovators and leaders across industries about the strategies and the insights and really all the unconventional thinking that turns potential into profit every single time. If you believe that smart design, decisive leadership, and strategic risk are the keys to real ROI, you're in the exact right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision, strategy, and bold decisions drive real results in real estate and business. I'm your host, Liat Siegel, and today I'm joined by Kara, who brings over 20 years of experience in education and coaching into the world of commercial real estate. Known for her people-first approach, she's quickly built a strong reputation as a leasing agent after graduating from Foresight's CRE launch program. Kara is also an active member of CREW, ICSC, and NAWBO. And when she's not closing deals, she's running a local hauling company with her husband or enjoying the charm of Main Street Bernie. Let's welcome Kara to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, first, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are, and why you love what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a high school teacher and a soccer coach for many, many, many years, and always had kind of an entrepreneurial desire to try a lot of different things over the years, and never really took the leap. And a couple years ago, well, I guess during COVID 2020, my husband and I started a hauling company, and so we started from scratch and just learning how to run a business. And through that, one of the things that we had to do was to find space to lease for our truck. And so when we did that, that kind of really, I think, was the initial thing that got my juices flowing as far as, ideas to build wealth and to go into business. And so a couple years went by, and we were growing the business, and I decided to finally just take the jump, step away from education, and go into commercial real estate. And I really didn't know what aspect of real estate I wanted to go into initially. And I kind of tossed around doing residential, and the more I found out about commercial and the way that it worked as far as investments, and it just being a little less, I think, emotional, honestly, than residential, that's what really steered me that direction. And the CRE launch program is a training, like a 10-week really intensive training that Foresight puts on every summer. And everything kind of timed itself perfectly where I could go straight into that program, learn just more than I could have ever imagined in that 10 weeks. And that kind of got me off on my start. And I worked a developer for about 6 months and did some leasing there. And then I actually went back to Foresight and became a broker with them, doing mostly retail leasing. And so I represent landlords for shopping centers and lease space. And I also do a lot of tenant rep and work with small businesses to help them find space. And I find that's where, like, the teacher part of me really gets fed, because when I work with a lot of tenants, they know their business and they know how to run their business and to sell what they're selling or whatever they're doing. But they don't know the ins and outs necessarily on how to find a space, what to do once you do find that space. They may not have connections with construction people or commercial insurance people or those kind of things. And kind of walking them through that process is really enjoyable to me, because I feel like it's just that, like I said, that teacher in me that likes to kind of guide people along their way. And so that's what I do now.
Amazing. And what's like that one thing that's kind of made you stay? Like if you could say one thing that you love most about it, would it be that teaching thing? Is there something a little bit bigger?
Well, it's the people I think that I'm around, the people that I meet, right, and just there. I think people are so interesting, and business owners in particular, entrepreneurs, people that have an idea, see a way to make money, and then go figure it out, and just seeing the different approaches that people take. I just really enjoy that. I like hearing people's stories. And then the other part of it is, I think, just the not the flexibility, but just that every day is different, and your calendar is just kind of all over the place. And sometimes you're just, jumping in the car and running to meet somebody who wants to see a space, and sometimes you've got meeting after meeting, and trying to deal with lawyers and that kind of thing. So every day is different, and I like that too.
Yeah, it's a different landscape than just corporate or, being in the box. What do you feel is one of the biggest challenges that you've faced? I saw that you posted on your profile about an experience that you had in the beginning when you got started. What has been the biggest challenge in your life throughout your career specifically in real estate that has kind of been the turning point or has made you approach it differently?
I know what you're talking about. I was talking about spending a lot of time on basically a client that it didn't bring any fruit as far as a commission, right? It didn't bring any money. And I spent a lot of time, and I didn't see it as a waste because I learned so much throughout that process, and especially being new in the business. So that was a challenge, but I think just getting into the industry itself was the hardest thing, because when I figured out what I wanted to do, and I didn't even know how to do that job yet, I went and I met with a lot of brokerages. I met with a lot of owners of brokerages, and everybody kind of said the same thing. They didn't want to take on somebody new, right? And this is the kind of job where, you're not going to get paid for helping somebody else get into the business, right? And then be a competitor to you. So there's not a lot of motivation for people to want to help you into this business. So I think that was the biggest challenge, is just like getting into the business. And so I think for the first 6 months to a year, I was just showing up like at whatever networking events or things that had to do with commercial real estate. I just needed people to know my face. And so I just kept showing up and making it known that I'm here, and eventually people kind of accept the fact that, oh, okay, you're part of the brokerage community. And if you're likable, right, then people don't mind you being around. So I think that was the biggest challenge.
It sounds like a lot of determination and perseverance to just show I'm here. Like, I'm not going away. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. That's fabulous. And to what you were saying before about, residential versus commercial, I find that in my company and in our field as well. We do residential also, but commercial is just so different. Working with entrepreneurs, people who are very growth oriented, who are constantly like solution oriented, looking to grow and do big things and have, these grand ideas. It's very exhilarating, to be around.
Yes. I think, yes, business owners have so much energy, our positive energy. I feel like that it just feels good to be around them.
Yeah, absolutely. So what have you learned about your customers since the time that you started until now, about how they buy and why they buy?
Of course, it always depends on the business, but every business wants to be, high visibility, high traffic, Class A center, and be in the best place, but then when you get to the budget, you find out, okay, that's really what drives where somebody can be, right? What they can afford. But I think, it depends. You have your destination businesses that can really be anywhere because they're going to draw people in, and you have people, or you have businesses that need to be around other businesses to draw people. Otherwise, they're not going to survive. And so that's part of my job, is to help businesses figure out where they really need to be successful. Because, my goal is that 5 years from now, they're still in business, and they're still running and they're growing. And that first location especially can, make or break a business.
Right. So what are the key factors? Like when you're looking at a location that could make or break, what are those key factors that somebody should be looking for?
I think, again, it's so niche to whatever the business is. It's hard to say globally what they need to have. But also, I think the space that they create sometimes is really just as important than what the center is or where it is, right? When people walk into their space, how does it make people feel, and do they want to come back, right? A couple months ago, we had a luncheon for crew. That's commercial real estate women, and San Antonio has one of the largest chapters in the nation, I think. Or I'm thinking of NABO. NABO's National Association of Women Business Owners. But anyway, crew has luncheons, and they bring in speakers, and they brought in this woman named Jennifer Say, I believe is her last name, and she's the founder of Art Plus. What is it called? Art Plus Artisans Consulting. And she basically works with business owners to help design their space and bring art into their space, right? And make, people want to work there, or customers want to come there, and that kind of thing. And it was so fascinating because she said that by introducing art or enhancing the aesthetics of a place, right, a space, you can increase foot traffic by like 30 to 40% just by the space that you create, right? And she said that every business owner should have, like, when their construction plan should have 2 to 5% of their budget just for artwork and the things that are going to create that environment that people want to either work in or come as customers. And I thought that was amazing because and when people look at construction budgets and they're starting to do value engineering, usually the first thing to go, right, is going to be so, but 2 to 5% of your budget, but increasing your foot traffic 30 to 40%, like that's a huge ROI, right? I mean, if you know that and understand that, I think people wouldn't cut that if they understood that. But anyway, so I don't know. I kind of went around your question about why they choose a space.
You answered my next question.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that there are always, certain aspects. I know we touched on this last time we spoke about, like, if it's in a high traffic area, that it has to be strategic in terms of location for that market specifically, because it's a micro market kind of play. And I would love to get in touch with this woman. Maybe you could put me in touch with her, because that's literally everything that we do, just on a larger scale in terms of not just the art and decor, but also maximizing the layout and revenue potential, adding revenue drivers within the company, whether it's, I believe you had mentioned last time something about a chiropractor, and I had said something about, like, adding, product or something within the space to be able to add another revenue stream to their business. So there are so many drivers of revenue, and I love that spoke to you, because and that this woman had these numbers to be able to share, because this ultimately, when you have that perceived value there, and people feel good in the space, they'll want to come back again. And the numbers don't lie. It's literally black and white for everybody to see.
Right. Yeah. And she talked about, I believe it was Google, or there was or maybe it was Methodist. It was some national group that she designed for, but they had really specially designed all of these art pieces in this large, office. But when they opened the office, they took the employees through the space and talked about each one of the pieces and what they were and what they meant, and talked about how much value that brought to how much the people who were working there appreciated, what was around them. And then also it, made them want to be there. And then if they brought in other people, they would want to talk about these pieces. And, so it was really interesting.
Yeah, that absolutely creates then, like, it furthers the ethos of the company, right? Their mission statement. Because if the artwork and the decor and all of that is directed towards the very essence of what the company stands for, it's a constant daily reminder for the employees, for clients coming in,
Sure.
and people that feel good do good. And so, and they stay longer. You have less churn.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you seeing in terms of these spaces that you work on, that you lease? What kind of upgrades, or are they just blank boxes that, it's basically they do whatever they want with? What are those things that you're seeing, make them want to lease that space versus another?
Okay. Well, it's interesting because, a lot of times spaces are shell, right? They have no floors, no walls, no AC, right? It's just shell space. And it's interesting because for oftentimes like national tenants, that they have a blueprint and they have designers and all of those things, right? That's easy for them to just see the space. Okay, do the demographics work? All right, yes, we want to be here, and we'll go in and do the space. But most of the time you're working with like people who are mom and pops, this is their first location or maybe a second location or whatever. And they're going to have to come in and see it and envision it themselves, right? And then also do the work. And so shell space can be difficult to sell, right? So a lot of times we talk to owners about creating a white box and putting up the walls and the electricity and putting in AC and maybe an office and a bathroom, and now you've got this just open space that somebody who is not used to designing or creating space can walk into and think, okay, I can do something with this, right? But it's an expense and it's a risk for the landlord, right? Because now they don't know that somebody's going to come in and want to do something totally crazy to it, or have to rework the wiring and rip out the walls to put in plumbing and all of this stuff. So they might be putting in, $50 a square foot or something of money into this space when they don't have a tenant. So it's a risk. But can you lease that space maybe 3 or 4 months earlier by having it ready to go, because the people you're showing it to realize, oh yeah, I can make this work, as opposed to a shell. So white boxes sometimes are what are really attractive to tenants. Sometimes if it's a second generation space and it has a lot of walls or a lot of rooms and they need a different layout or space plan, it's funny because some tenants can walk in and they can imagine it and go, oh, okay, well, yeah, we just take this wall down, this, and this will be fine. But then I've had some tenants that come into a space that's not exactly what they need, and they just can't see it. Like, they can't get over the fact that there's, 2 rooms there and those are going to have to move, or, they just can't get through it. So it just depends on the tenant and their ability to kind of see if they can make it work.
To be able to visualize, yeah.
Right.
What about like the exterior, the facade, and the curb appeal? Does that play into whether or not they feel like it's a good property to lease?
Definitely. I think, most people would want to be, it would depend on the business. Again, I keep saying that, but I mean, assuming they want to be in a Class A property, right? A newer property. There are older properties that are really nice that they need capital improvements, right? So fresh coat of paint, there are things that landlords can do to improve the property and maybe redo the parking lot, if it needs to be redone and restriped and those kind of things. I think, that's going to make a tenant feel like, well, one, the landlord cares about the property, right? And is going to probably take care of their tenants. But, again, it comes down to demographics, I think, is going to be maybe a bigger driver than the outside facade at the end of the day.
Right. It seems like no matter what, whether it's a parking lot or, the exterior of the building or a white box, that obviously strategic design matters. And, how even, people often think of design as a luxury, but I look at it like this marketing tool that ultimately helps the clients, the customers, the guests, if it's a hotel, to be able to envision themselves there and to want to be either in that space or decide not to. Do you ever do renderings or mock-ups for a space to help them envision so that the owner doesn't have to do the white box?
I do. I'll sometimes work with a client to get their vision and put it on Canva, and just because I think it helps with clarity, right? Of they're saying they need this, but is that really what you're understanding, right? So I think, yes, I do like, very, very basic mock-ups on Canva, that I can present to a landlord and say, okay, this is kind of what you need. But when it gets more sophisticated, and I think I was telling you about the therapy group I'm working with, and they're taking over a 10,000 square foot space, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the tenant doesn't necessarily have that mindset of being able, and there's a lot of walls, and it takes a lot of vision, and so they have a professional space planner who's, and they've gone in there multiple times, and just, it is going to be a home for at least 10 years for them, right? And they have a lot of clients, they have a lot of employees, the flow has to be good, and you just, a lot of times, I'm the same way. I mean, I can't, unless I'm in a place, I can't really look at it on a piece of paper and tell you if it's going to work. I would kind of have to, see it for myself. So those professionals, those architects and drafters are so important sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that every time, a little tip for our audience is using the software called canvas.io. It will do, you literally take your phone and it's a LiDAR with the LiDAR and you scan the whole space, and then you can upload it into a software like SketchUp, which is also 3D. So you can see both the 2D and the 3D at the same time, and you can make adjustments, you can move walls and stuff like that. It's pretty simple to use. But yes, space planning is really important to be able to maximize every square inch and to have proper flow and function of the space so that when, a customer comes in, they know where they're going. They're not coming in. And sometimes I'll go into a coffee shop and I'm like, I don't know where to order.
Yes.
I'm confused. Where do you go? And then I go to the end of the line and we're supposed to go to the beginning of the line. And it's really about signage and space planning and being intentional and understanding with the demographic. I think that's a lot of what we spoke about last time is understanding your specific local market and how to set the space up accordingly or why they'll purchase.
Yeah.
So tell me some, maybe 3 key things you feel like were shocking to you when starting out in real estate, and what have you learned from those things?
I think one thing that I've learned is just, people are people, no matter how much is in their bank account. People are just people. And I talked about earlier just how I like to talk to people and just get to know people and their stories and that kind of thing. But I've just really learned that people will talk to you, and share what they have learned. And if you just, ask them questions. And so I don't know, I guess that shouldn't have shocked me, but just that there's no, class divisions, I guess, as far as in this business. I've been really fortunate to be around a lot of people that just wanted to share their knowledge. So that's been one thing. I tell you, just being in a world of grown-ups all day was a little bit of culture shock for me. Going into an office environment after years of being surrounded by hundreds of teenagers all day. So that was a little bit of an adjustment.
What was that like? Was that hard, or was it good?
It really was, because I think the level of stress that teachers work under is just like 100 times of I think most other professions, and just to be able to sit like in an office with your thoughts and focus on what you're doing with like light music in the background. That was, believe it or not, really, that whole environment was really shocking to me, because I was just used to nonstop people, nonstop talking, nonstop questions. You're making, micro decisions, millions of them a day, and to be able to do a job where I don't have all that noise and that distraction is
context switching.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice.
That is shocking. One last shocking thing.
One last shocking thing. I think not shocking. I shouldn't have been shocking, because this is what I hear people say all the time. But when it comes to going into commercial real estate, is just the pace of things, how long things take. It's just so slow, to start working with a tenant who needs space, and to find that space may take months. To negotiate that space may take months. Then to finally get to a lease, and then they've got to do all the things to get open. So it's just such a long process, and that's the hard thing about this business, is just a slow ramp up, because you're just spending a lot of time, many months, where you're not, those aren't billable hours in our business. You're not getting paid anything, until there's finally a lease executed, and that may not even happen. So you're just spending all your time assuming that, everything's going to go well in the end. And like I shared in that one story, it doesn't always work out, and you may spend all that time and you don't get paid for any of it.
Absolutely. What are you seeing in terms of, trends within the commercial real estate? You're saying that it's slow. Is it slower now, would you say? Do you feel like it's only up from here, or has it changed drastically after COVID?
Well, I've heard people who've been in the business longer than I I've heard them say that things have seemed to get harder to get done, and actually slower. But a lot of times it's who you're working with, and there are people who I'm always in a hurry to get things off my desk. If it's on my desk and I need to move something along, if I need to respond to something, if I need to find sites, whatever it is, I want to get it done and get it back in somebody else's court. But there are some people who don't work like that, and they take their time, and and it can be frustrating sometimes. But I think that generally speaking, it seems like from the sentiment that I've heard from other brokers is that it has gotten more difficult to get things done.
Yeah, I've heard that commercial real estate is definitely not the same and never will be, but I think that that's where innovation is born, right? Out of those situations, that's where, maybe they will do a rework of what the space is used for, and we'll see new trends popping up?
You know what? On that note, there was an article that just came out by ICSC, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. And they talked about Kimco, which is a big REIT. They own like over 500 shopping centers, mostly like grocery anchored. And they talked about how they work their marketing paired up with their IT department and using, I think, AI in a large degree, created a platform where their properties each had a landing page with all the information you could need. And what was happening is they had thousands, or maybe I think they had like 12,000 vacancies or whatever. Wow. If you're depending on people answering the phone, people setting up tours, people get, all this stuff, right? Yeah, it's going to be slow. It's going to be clunky. People are going to fall through the cracks. People are going to go other places. But they created with technology this easy way, I guess, to give access to people who are looking at these spaces, maybe driving by and, looking through the window. They could jump on their phone and then boom, all the information they needed, all the demographics were there, all, everything they needed to know about the space. And then they could either move on based on what they saw or say, hey, this will work for me. And it sped things up so much and was like a huge increase to their, lease up of their spaces.
Wow. I love that. I love hearing stories like that because it just shows that you need to innovate and you need to stay on top of what's happening in the market, how people buy currently, right? Mm-hmm. What's the new way, not what has worked, but staying in touch with, how people buy and how they make their decisions in order to create the biggest return on investment. If you could give one main tip to either somebody who's just starting out in real estate or somebody who is looking to lease a property, what would that be?
To really find somebody who knows the business and is the type of person to share what they know and, to kind of mentor and to guide, to have someone or people around you that can help is the most important thing. And there are a lot of great people out there who, are kind of like me that just want to help and teach and share what they know. So I think that's the most important thing.
Find a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights. It's been fascinating. If our audience wants to get in touch with you and speak, how can they do so? You
can go to foresightcre.com. That's our brokerage webpage. It has my contact information there, and they can shoot me an email at kwalters@foresightcre.com.
Amazing. And do you work outside of your specific area, or are you more local?
More local, I guess, the San Antonio area. Been kind of looking at expanding to the Austin area because, ASA, Austin, San Antonio is becoming almost like one big metropolis. So kind of expanding, but basically Central Texas.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kara. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.